I have the honor, the absolute honor, to introduce Robin Beck, who is the executive director of the Boulder International Film Festival. I'm having problems with this. And co-founder with her sister. And she and her sister are also doing the digital media event tomorrow. And this is the third event. So if you don't have tickets for that, we really urge you to try to make that as well. Robin, I met when I came here in May. And Robin is a passionate filmmaker and a film lover. And she doggedly pursues the best films and the best directors and producers to come here and speak to the audiences here in Colorado. Robin?
Wow, thank you so much for coming, everyone. This is so exciting, a sold-out show, and we've got Lawrence Kasdan and Meg Kasdan and Anthony Bregman here tonight, and we are just so excited about that. Such an honor. And we're excited to welcome all of you, too, because you're the reason that this festival has become one of the hottest young festivals in America, if I do say so myself. During the festival, we're also going to be really proud to be welcoming to Boulder William H. Macy and Martin Sheen. It's going to be fabulous conversations. Out of the 50 films showing at BIFF this year, we're proud that we've got more than 30 filmmakers who've traveled into Boulder to represent their films for Q&As after their films. Can you all stand up, filmmakers, if you're here, for a round of applause? Woohoo! Yeah! Woo! I'd also like to thank my mom and dad who are here tonight. Mom and Dad, can you stand up? They're right back there. We like to have fun in our family. My mom's new line is a little song, a little dance, a little seltzer up your pants. And we keep on saying, it's supposed to be down your pants. And she said it's a lot more fun up your pants. So we like to have fun in our family. And the Boulder International Film Festival just doesn't appear by magic. We have got so many wonderful volunteers, 400 this year, who make this event happen. And we wouldn't be anywhere without them. And they're really, really special to everyone. And they're doing such a great service for Boulder. And we're going to be introducing a lot of our core staff later. And thank you so much, folks, for coming. I'm going to introduce my sister, Kathy Beck, who's going to talk for a few minutes. Kathy?
Hi, folks. So wonderful to see you all out here tonight. As tradition has it, I get to come out and thank everybody who makes this festival possible. It ends up being just about everybody, I think, in the audience, but I'm so happy to do it every year. One thing I want to do to start out is to thank Hot Club of Pearl Street for doing such a great job with the music. I want to thank also Big Red F Restaurants for the fabulous food tonight. Also Seth Ellis Chocolatier for the chocolates, and Bhakti Chai for the chai. And our official wine of the Boulder International Film Festival is Francis Ford Coppola Winery, so we thank them as well. And I do want to thank the Boulder Theater staff. These people are wonderful. They know how to put on an event, and we love working with them every year. They do a fantastic job. Now I want to just ask my core staff to come up on stage really briefly. I need you guys to see who really makes this festival run. So if you're on the core staff, come on up. Real quick, come on, chop, chop, guys. We usually get the same people that come back year after year. Come on down. Woo. Thank you. Thank you. Anna, Becca. Lisa, Kevin Smith, John Kubley. Come on up, guys. Ruth White, Youth Advisory Council. Come on up, folks. We even had someone come in from Washington, D.C. this year who has volunteered in the past. She moved to Washington, but she flew back in for the festival. So we're so happy about that. Come on up, guys. Looks like we almost got them. Couple more. Come on up. Dave Reapy, our tech director. Woo! Anybody else? Does that cover it? Almost. Okay, guys. These are the people that make this festival possible. Woo! They work tirelessly, month after month after month. They crawl up on the stage if they have to, but this is a talented, fabulous group of people, and we couldn't do this without them. And I want to thank Joseph Cummins and Kathy DeBay, our events coordinator, for putting this evening's event on. And I also want to thank Kevin Smith, our executive producer, who has really ran the show here. Thank you, Kevin. All right, we still have volunteers coming up. All right, guys, thank you. We appreciate it. And now I'm going to start thanking a few of our sponsors who help make this happen. We've got KBCO, Linhart PR, the St. Julian Hotel and Spa, the Daily Camera, the Hotel Boulderado, People Productions, Flow Creative, Backpacker Magazine, Flatiron Subaru, Real D, Millstone Evans Group, Big Red F, who I mentioned did all the food tonight, fabulous. 5280 Magazine, W.W. Reynolds, Francis Ford Coppola Winery, Lazy Dog Restaurant, Egg Strategy, First Western Trust Bank, Whole Foods, Downtown Boulder Inc., Bhakti Chai, Colorado Office of Film, Television, and Media, the Outdoor Cinema Network, Western Disposal, who's helping us move towards zero waste. We're so excited about that. Boulder Magazine, Brock Media, Multimedia, who's providing our projection equipment for the festival. Todd Reed, I Support You, Alpine Audio Visual, KUNC. Big round of applause to all these fabulous sponsors. I want to just ask the board and advisory board to stand. See, I told you guys that it's really everybody in the audience that helps make this festival happen. Could the board of the Colorado Film Society and the Boulder International Film Festival and the advisory board stand? Thank you for all your wonderful input throughout the year. I also just want to thank some grantors that helped make it happen financially for us. Colorado Council on the Arts, the Boulder Arts Commission, the Bodecker Foundation, the William H. Donner Foundation, Twisted Foundation, the SCFD, the Red Empress Foundation, XL Energy, Philanthropies, the Community Foundation. Thank you to those grantors as well. And I also want to thank Bill Valier. He is a sculptor who does all our awards every year, and we so appreciate that, Bill. And Youth Advisory Council. Is the Youth Advisory Council here tonight? If you're on the Youth Advisory Council, please stand up. Woo! This is a group of kids that work all year round helping us pick our student films, and they put on our World Cinema Days, and they learn how to make movies, and we love them. Thanks, guys, for a great year. Okay. Let's just see here. I think that might be it, believe it. Who didn't I thank? If you didn't get thanked, please stand up. But I think that covers everybody. I just want to illustrate that it takes everybody to put this festival on, and that includes grantors and sponsors. I know who I wanted to thank, individual donors. If you are an individual donor, please stand. We couldn't do it without you either. and our boards and all of our staff and everybody. I just want to thank everybody for everything they do for the festival. And now, getting to the presentation part of the evening. To get the presentation going, please help me welcome the man responsible for so many of the wonderful movies we've watched over the last 35 years, Larry Kasdan.
Thank you. What a great theater, what a great crowd, what a great town. Meg and I just saw at Boulder for the first time today. It's amazing. We're here with our producer, Anthony Bregman. He's getting the award tonight. I don't know why, but I'm going to try to make it seem reasonable that he should get more attention than me. The movie you're about to see, I didn't realize it at the time, but it really began 7 years ago when Meg and I rescued a dog from a shelter in Los Angeles. And a couple years later, we lost the dog. We searched for the dog, and we found the dog. And after that, Meg suggested that we write a screenplay about that experience. And I said, no, I don't want to do anything autobiographical. And she said, no, we'll make everything up. There will just be like a little bit that's autobiographical. And I said, well, what part will be autobiographical? And she said, a little bit. I said, well, be more specific. And she said, well, it's a story of a woman who loves her dog more than her husband. Thank you for coming tonight. We hope you enjoy that story. We'll see you later.
In June of 1981, I was a college senior about to graduate college in Boston, and on a Friday night, I got to sit in a full house at the Sac Sherry Theater at the Prudential Center and whoop and holler and cheer and laugh with a theater full of people opening night of Raiders of the Lost Ark. 2 years later, I found myself uncomfortably attracted to Kathleen Turner in Body Heat. A few years after that, I just wanted to be part of that group that sat around the kitchen table in The Big Chill. And in 1991, I was tremendously moved by the honesty of the movie Grand Canyon. Those films, and many more, are the responsibility of a gentleman in the house tonight, the director of the film tonight. Please help me welcome back to the stage, Larry Kasdan.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I want to talk to you about my producer, Anthony Bregman. Anthony graduated from Yale, and he told me, he said, I am a writer. And for 2 years, he lived the writer's life, which he found was extraordinarily lonely and hard. And 2 years later, he said he told himself, I'm not a writer. But what he decided to be sounded like a lot of fun, which is an independent producer. The reality of being an independent producer is this. You make a bunch of phone calls that people don't return. You're constantly asking for money from people who wisely say no. And you find people crossing the street to avoid you. But it's a miracle when you can get an independent film made. When you can get it funded and then produced and then distributed, which is a whole nother problem. And if you get one done, it's a miracle. If you get two, you're extraordinary. Anthony Bregman has had 25 independent films made. Some of those movies, amazing list, where he has a producing credit on The Ice Storm, on The Savages, The Brothers McMullen, Please Give, Synecdoche, Our Idiot Brother last year, Friends with Money, and one of the great independent films of all time, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I think there's a reason that Anthony has had such success. He's 45 years old. He's got 25 producing credits. It's extraordinary. It's because he has an absolute passion for the story. Once he commits to the story, then nothing will deter him. And independent film is all about not being deterred, because essentially every independent film starts out with 100 people saying no. So a great independent producer is the one who doesn't care who says no. And Anthony has a passion. But I discovered one other thing when he and I, luckily, we were introduced by a friend before A Darling Companion, and it was a great lucky moment for me and for Meg when we met Anthony. And here's what I discovered, that all through the ups and downs of getting the movie financed and made, when I would become very discouraged, or I would say, this is impossible, or we're asking people to work for nothing, Anthony always said, oh, it'll work out. It'll be fine. And for some reason, against all reason, I believed him. And that is why he's an extraordinary independent film director, producer, and extraordinary producer, period. It is my honor to give to him the first Boulder International Film Festival Award for Excellence in Producing to Anthony Bregman.
Thank you very much. This is a very moving evening for me, because first of all, you guys are an incredible audience. That was a really great screening, and you guys got everything in the movie. And if we could just package you in every theater in America from April 20th on, we'll be good. And getting this award is really incredible for me. Producers don't usually get awards, and so it's a real honor, and as much of an honor as to get the award, to get a introduction like that from Larry Kasdan, who has been my hero since junior high school, so thank you. I'm sure many of you are also wondering what exactly a producer does. And I'm going to give you a quick story of what a producer does that comes from the first film I ever produced, which was a movie called Love God. It is a crazy skate punk monster sex movie that played at Sundance and was released in the mid-90s. It was actually a very pioneering film in that it was the first film that was shot on digital video ever. And now most films are shot on digital video. So it was really ahead of its time. And on the first day of shooting that movie, which was the first day of shooting any movie for me as a producer, I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning for a 5 a.m. call at a derelict hotel location in East Harlem of New York, which turned out to be a heroin shooting gallery. And we were basically shooting while addicts were kind of standing behind, being held back by PAs, so they couldn't get into the shot. And the moment they were out, they go, "Are you done? Are you done yet? Are you done? Are you done yet?" And then they just kind of go into their rooms. After a full day of shooting, which on a movie like that was about 18 or 19 hours, I went to our production office to just check that everything was going well. And the production office on this very low budget movie was actually the loading dock of a garage. That's where we had our production office. And by then it was raining outside, and we had installed a bathroom illegally because we needed a bathroom in a production office. And because it was an illegal bathroom and because it was raining, the toilet started overflowing. And it wasn't just the water in the toilet, it was all the turds that had been in there for weeks and weeks of production. And it started overflowing and into the office, and everyone who was in the office was like, "Okay, that's it, I'll see you tomorrow on set." And it was me there and basically we had a lot of props there that had to work the next day, a lot of props that we were gonna use. And so I spent the night of my first day of producing the first film I ever produced brooming shit out the front door of this illegal office, out the loading dock, so that I could protect the props that had to work the next day. And I think that is what producing is brooming shit out the front door so that the props can play the next day. So thank you for this.
Yeah, I'm going to have her. Anthony, I'm going to put Anthony here. Larry, if you would go right there. So here we are sitting up on the stage, and you may see that we have a fourth chair open up here. We were for weeks we've been knowing that these two gentlemen will be joining us, but we were very surprised and thrilled this week to find out that we were going to be joined by the co-writer of this film, the executive producer of this film, co-writer of Grand Canyon, associate producer of Grand Canyon. And for those of you, if you were one of those people that bought 7 million of the Big Chill soundtrack, we owe it all to her. She picked the music for it. Mrs. Lawrence Kasdan, Meg Kasdan, is going to join us. So we're just going to take a few minutes and chat about the film and a few other things here. And then in a little bit, we have some microphones right here at the base of the aisles, and we would love to hear some questions from you and our audience. That's part of what a good film festival is give you a chance to speak right to the filmmakers. So we'll do that in just a little bit. Let me see if I got this right, Larry. So let me see. The movie had dogs, Subarus, organic prescriptions, and an herbal enema. A perfect Boulder movie. Another reason why we knew that this would be a great opening night film for us here. And I don't know if you noticed, but the cameo of you two in the beginning with the dog, was that really your dog?
That's the real dog.
In the very beginning when Diane Keaton first comes out onto the street and you guys walk across.
That's Mac. That was lost in the mountains for 3 weeks. Can you hear me okay? No.
Steve, mic 3.
Hello there.
So let me just make sure, for the interest of marital calm, what wasn't real about those two between you two, since it's a semi-autobiographical film?
Well, he's not a doctor.
True.
A lot of it's not autobiographical.
Yeah.
But there are incidents that actually happen to us.
So just, either one of you, just give us the background of how this movie did come to be and what really did happen. Because there is a lot of the story in here.
We had rescued Mac, and we were in Telluride. We're big Colorado fans, people. And we had to go to a wedding, and so we left him with a friend. They were up hiking. The friend was a big dog person. She knew what she was doing. She had her dog with them. And a mountain biker came down the trail and frightened Mac. Now, Mac, we had rescued him when he was 7 years old. He had a lot of neuroses, That's the thing about rescuing dogs. You get whatever that package is, and you embrace it, and you never really know. Meg wanted to hire a private detective and find out everything that had happened to Mac for the first 7 years. We never did do that. But for some reason, this mountain biker so frightened Mac that he took off, and we thought he would funnel down into the town. It was all aimed that way, but he disappeared. He had a chip in him, he had 2 collars on, but he absolutely disappeared from the face of the earth, and we started looking for him, searching. We had newspaper ads, we had radio ads, we scoured the hills ourselves for days at a time, and he just would not show up. And we were about to give up, I think. It was really a sad thing. We were totally devoted to the dog. And a woman in L.A. who had walked Mac, Meg was reluctant to tell her. She was so involved with this dog. And finally, Meg said, "Look, I got to tell you some bad news. Mac has disappeared." And
This is about 2 weeks after. He had been missing for about 2 weeks.
and she said to you,
She said, "I have a feeling that he's okay." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, "Well, I just have a feeling that they're pretty resilient, these animals, and I think he's okay." And I said, "Well, why do you think that? It's been 2 weeks. He's been out in the elements." And she said, "Well, I don't want to say too much." And I said, "Well, tell me, what are you thinking?" And she said, "Well, I find things." And she proceeded to tell me that she felt that she had a special connection to animals, and that she knew that he was still alive, and she gave us hope that he was still out there. So we ended up going back to Colorado, to Telluride, and searching for him again for 3 days, doing what these characters in the movie actually do, which is just sort of walk around calling, where you feel kind of ludicrous doing that. But he did not show up. We left, and we felt, we have to admit it, he's gone. He cannot still be alive after 3 weeks. And we got home, and that afternoon we got a call that someone had seen him on another trail and called the number that was plastered all over the town. And there he was. And he's at our house now.
And speaking of applause, have you gotten that type of reaction of other audiences that when
people
he
are
shows
happy.
up?
People are happy when Mac comes back.
Larry, in the introduction, I mentioned a lot of the films that you have done in the past, big blockbusters, but this was your first independent film.
Yes.
Give us a little history about that direction that you took and some of the new challenges that presented for you as a director.
I had
and writer.
made 10 movies within the studio system, and then I ran into having trouble getting the movies made. I was going to do Richard Russo, a wonderful novelist, wrote a book called The Risk Pool. I adapted that. Tom Hanks was going to be in it. And we just ran into a roadblock. And what I didn't realize at that time was this was the beginning of a change in Hollywood, where all the kind of movies that I had been making for 20 years were no longer going to be made in Hollywood. And that if you wanted to make those kind of movies, they were going to have to be made independently. And I went through a long period when I wrote 2 scripts. I developed the Russo book. There was another project, and pretty soon years have passed, and you haven't made a movie. And I take full responsibility for being very slow on the uptake. I did not get that things had changed so much that a studio had made Grand Canyon, a studio had made The Big Chill, a studio had made all these movies, but I don't think I could get those movies made today. And so when Meg and I wrote this movie, we didn't even present it to the studios. We said, we've got to make this independently. And I had met Anthony very recently, and we presented it to Anthony. He said, "Look, do you want to do this?" And he said, "Absolutely, let's do it." And that's why he gets this award, and he got on it, and he was relentless, and we got him in.
So Anthony, here you are, 43 probably at the time-ish, if you're 45 now, okay? Here comes your childhood hero approaching you with a film. You have a great slate of movies in your history and on your resume. What are some of the questions that you were asking yourself about whether or not to do this, even though, Lawrence has the history that he has in his resume, but it was his first independent film? What were the things that you were looking for as a producer?
Well, the greatest joy that I have is finding something that I want to do. Is finding a project that feels right, with a great story to be told, with a great storyteller to tell it, and then figuring that there's some way that we can get the thing done, and that's what I love. That's what I live for, and this was it. And my first question to Larry, when I did this, I remember I was standing on a street corner on the phone to you, and I said, I want to do it. I want to do it, and I know how to make it. Do you want to do it? Do you really want to do it? Because it's not going to be like any of your other movies. This is going to be a different production ethic. It's going to be a different schedule. It's going to be a different budget. We're going to make these actors work for nothing, which we're going to make people work for like the lowest possible rate. We're going to have to, instead of shooting 2 pages a day like you've done on other films, you're going to shoot 3 or 4 pages a day. And we're going to find a way to make it, but do you want to do this? Because it's not something that you'd ever done before. Like that was my biggest question, because I was up for it, but I can't do anything if everybody on a film like this needs to be on board with how you make a film like this.
And everybody was on board, because if I have this right, all the actors worked for scale.
Well, that's confidential.
But no one here will repeat that.
But cheaply.
Just between you and us.
Way under market value. We'll just put it that way.
They worked for, I think, not every actor on this film, but most actors on this film, their agent said to me, I have never asked my client to work for this amount before. And I said, well, this is what it is. This is what it is. This is the movie they should do it on. And then they signed on. They did it. Nobody didn't do the movie because of the amount that we were paying them. And in a way, that creates this great ethic for making the movie, that makes the movie on these terms so much easier to make, because they're there to make the movie. They're not there for the money. They're not there for the perks. They're not there for the the great living conditions or the big trailers or anything like that, because they don't have it. In fact, I wanted to put them in worse trailers than we ended up putting them in, so that they would so that every time they're in their trailer, they would want to go out to set, and I think I was voted down on that, but
just barely. It's hard to get worse trailers. There's a shortage of worse trailers.
Meg, of the movies that Larry's made, you've been involved in a handful of them, but not all of them. And so here's this movie about a fraying marriage of 2 people who've been together for a very long time and are kind of losing their way together. Did any of that resonate with you? Did you find yourself saying, hey, you know what? Kevin Kline learned it. I'm going to come at Larry and let him know how I feel.
Well,
Putting you on the spot.
The movie certainly comes out of our lives. We have been married for 40 years. Wow. We have 2 sons. We have a grandson. We have done a lot of things together and spent a lot of time together. And also, a lot of our friends have been married for a long time. And so it was something that we wanted to explore, which was what it's like to be married to someone for a long time. What can go right, what can go wrong, but it's just been part of our experience, and so it came sort of naturally, I think, once we decided to do this, to have that be part of it.
You talk to parents in Hollywood who are in the Hollywood system, and you ask them about their kids going into the business, and they all say, man, please be a doctor or a lawyer or something. But you have, if I have this right, your brother is in the business, both your sons and the 2 of you. I would assume that dinner table conversations between the 5 of you is kind of interesting.
It was interesting, but there was never a time, I think, when we said, do this. We never said don't do it. We didn't say do it. But from the time the boys were very little, and I have pictures, production stills, I remember one of Jake, he's this tall. He's sitting in a director's chair talking to Bill Hurt and Joe Beth Williams, and he would sit there for hours. And John was the same way. And they were never, no matter how little they were never antsy. They never wanted to leave. They were interested in everything. And I think it's not so different from athletes whose parents are in the major leagues, in the NFL and the NBA. They never think that's impossible. People think it's nepotism. Well, we haven't done anything for the boys except be non-judgmental about it. And I think that these athletes, you can't get nepotism into the NFL. You have to be great. But what the advantage that the children have is that they see it's possible. And that's what happened with our boys, I think. They just didn't, they never asked our permission, they never asked for help. But they did the work, and luckily they could both write, and it was very gratifying to us. And they're both working.
Speaking of growth and aging, there are people that are saying that this film is part of the trilogy of Big Chill, the age group, the people, Kevin Kline's in all three, but the age group at the time and what they were going through. Second part is Grand Canyon. People are a little bit older, they have children of their own and are going through sort of a early midlife crisis-ish. And then Darling Companion, older couple, children are older, things like that. Is that something that was in your mind at the time, or after you finished this movie, did you sort of look back, or was that something made up by people outside your circle? Did you think about?
Anthony made that up. There is a little thing about, it's a snapshot. We never, ever thought we were summarizing a generation that would be outrageously presumptuous. Mm-hmm. We were trying to be very specific about things that we knew and friends that we had. And this movie came out of this thing with the dog, but it was clear to us after we started doing it that that was simply a way into just an investigation of relationships. And it's not just the couple that's been married a long time. It's a middle-aged couple that's finding a new relationship. It's a brand new couple. For me, one of the happiest things in the movie, and nobody really cares about it or notices about it, but that's the way it usually is with your favorite things, is that the last thing that happens in the movie is the dogs come back together, people are happy about that, that's fine, but their daughter says to her father, "We love being married." So there's a brand new marriage starting off in Bora Bora. And I think that's really what it's about. It's about how do you find a companion? This species, another species, someone that you can live with for a long time and find some comfort and and that's all, that's really what the movie's about. It's about the difficulty of finding somebody who you can be with for a long time and understands you. And anybody who owns a dog knows that that's what dogs do. They understand you, but even more than that, they are entirely within the moment. They're never bored. If you say, we're going to do this for 3 hours, they're like, great. They may be impatient to go out, but once you're out, they are never impatient to come back. Yeah. They are absolutely with the program, whatever you're doing. And I can't think of a better definition of a good companion than someone like that.
True. I want to come back to you, Anthony, and ask you a question in just a second, but I've got a video clip that I want to show the three of you that will show above your heads. Given that you have looked up to this man for a very long time, but haven't known him that long, but obviously known his work, as we all have here in the theater, I was really moved by the movie Grand Canyon in 1991. And there's a scene in it that I want to play for all of us in the theater and for you guys.
Surprise.
Where, because someone who wrote the film writes about what producers are and what they're like. So I'm going to ask you to react to this if we would, please. It's only about 45 seconds. From the movie Grand Canyon in 1991, Larry Kasdan writing some words that Steve Martin speaks about Hollywood producers.
What happened? Nothing happened. It never happened. Look, Mac, I'm an artist. Now go ahead and laugh because everybody does. Nobody in this town will admit that a producer is an artist. Hey, how you doing? But I know what I do. I know how many lame-o directors have had to carry on my back every step of the way and then watch as they take all the glory and reviews and awards.
Which awards were those?
That's okay. I don't mind working in modest anonymity. That's the way Thalberg did it too.
If they're so lame-o, why do you hire them?
Because I haven't got time to do it myself. Hanging around the set all day, doing that boring lighting and shit. Let them do that. That's beside the point. Point is, turn around. Turn around and go back down there.
So we're talking about lame-o directors being carried on the backs of producers. This is what you have to look forward to. Don't waste your time with lighting. That's what this guy is for.
Little did you know. That's what inspired me to be a producer. that scene. No, I mean, I actually feel like he's driving around in the back lot of a studio, and that's a certain type of producer. I feel like I'm in a different. It's a big business, and I'm in a corner of it. And the corner of the business that I'm in is actually director driven. It's about, and it's what interests me, like I was saying before. It's like, what's a good story told by a good storyteller? That to me is what makes that's the start of a movie. And in my mind, I'm a fan. I'm just a fan, and I can look at the script, and I can look at the work of a director, and say, you know what, I really like to see that movie get made, and I can push that pretty well, and I have, I don't consider myself to be, I'm not a director, I'm not a writer, I'm a failed writer, as you pointed out, but I'm a really good producer, and I can push, and I can make things happen that sometimes otherwise would not be happening, or would be done in someone else's hands, in a lesser way. I have no lack of self-esteem or regard, clearly. But that's what I do is essentially, in one hand, I can kind of, go and find millions of dollars and spend millions of dollars and, help, be there to make sure everything's done correctly and the story's told well and the music is right and no one gets killed and everything kind of like works out for the best of the storyteller. But in the end, I'm in the director's hands. I'm on their back. That's all I'm doing. And if the director doesn't work out, then I'm not going to stand in and direct it, and nor could I. Yeah. And I think that's like a separate type of business than the type of business that Steve Martin's character in that movie is in, which well,
you're not making the same kind of movies.
Yeah, no, and there's like real value to those movies, and it drives part of the business, and because that drives that business, my business is able to work also. And but the relationship between the producer and the director in my world is very different from that.
Yeah. I'm going to ask just a couple more questions, and then we want to come out here to the audience. So we've got some microphones here right at the base of these aisles. Feel free to just come to these microphones now if you have a question for either the Kasdans or for Anthony Bregman, and we'll come to them in just a second. Meg, I want to go back to you because choosing the music for The Big Chill made that movie. I really feel that the music...
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me correct that. It didn't make the movie, pardon me.
You made the movie.
It did.
However, it really was almost its own character in the movie. And I would just, if you can remember what it was like as you were choosing that music, could you just sort of take us back to that time and what you were looking for and how you might have been affected?
Well, that was a really fun job. And at the time I had two really young children, and I would just compile all these songs that we had really loved when we were in college and even before we were in college. I'm from Detroit, so Motown was a big part of my growing up. So I wanted to use some Motown. And, what I basically did was compile a whole group of songs that Larry and the editor, Carol Littleton, experimented with. And my one great idea for the whole thing was that I was in the car taking one of my sons to day camp, and I was listening to Marvin Gaye, and it occurred to me that I heard it through the grapevine could be at the beginning of the movie. And I called Larry. I was so excited that I just felt like that's going to work. And it did. Yep. So, and that was really, I think, probably the only one that I had an actual idea of where it would go. But the other ones were just all songs that we all had listened to and loved. Yeah. So it was fun.
One last question before we come out into the audience. Larry, I want to thank you on behalf of the state of Colorado, because shooting, although you shot a lot of this movie in Park City, but some in Telluride, you've been a fan of shooting in Colorado because of Continental Divide with John Belushi and Blair Brown. And allow me, Donald, if you're still here, allow me to thank him for you for coming and shooting in Colorado and bringing some attention to Colorado.
I was talking to the commissioner before the movie, and he said there was a hearing today about the tax rebates in the state. We wanted to make all this film in Colorado. That was how we wrote it. That's what we wanted to do. And we had a great time in Utah, and there's an enormous talent base there, and they made it possible for us to make this movie. But we wish, we hope, we pray that Colorado comes around and raises their rebates to the point, because I'll come back here next year and make a movie. I just want to do it.
We will welcome you with open arms, that's for sure. I think, do we have why don't we bring the house lights up just a little bit, and let's have people come. I'm sure that we have some questions for the Kasdans. Are you, oh no, you're not there. Over here? This is your chance at the Boulder International Film Festival to talk to this man who not only has worked on the movies that I've talked about, but wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark and Return of the Jedi. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
First of all, let me compliment you on Body Heat. I think that's one of the 2 or 3 best noir films ever made. I must have seen it 3 times in the first week after it was released. Do you have any particular favorites of any of the films that you've made? I know it's difficult to say that because they each have their nuances.
It is difficult. You sound like an athlete with the cliches, but the truth is that every one of these movies takes so much of your life, not just to write it and to direct it, and the psychic energy of putting it out there and having reaction to it, that you really do feel that they're like your children. And I have 2 sons. I do not have a favorite son. You feel that way, and the ones that are orphaned and the world rejects, you love them even more. You have no favorites. You just, when they're misunderstood, it's everything you worry about a child, that's what you worry about a movie. And each one, you have an enormous investment in.
Question over here on this side, please.
Hi there. Thank you for, first of all, being here and for bringing us such a wonderful story. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a producing question. With the independent film and attaching such marvelous talent to the project, what came first, the seed money or the attachments?
How would you answer that, Anthony?
It came together. I think part of the more confidential business.
That's what we want. We want the dirt.
Business tip on producing is that sometimes you get like a little bit of attention from an actor, and then you go to the financier and go, oh, and this person's going to do the movie. and maybe they'll do the movie. And then when you get the money in, you go back and you say, oh, hey, this is a finance film, it's greenlit, we're ready to go. And then so because I think actors they don't like to be attached to films that may or may not happen. They will sometimes, but they much prefer, to have a film with a start date. And the money always likes to know what the package is. So it's like a little bit of a quandary. So really what you need to do is you need to, whet that appetite a little bit and then leverage it for that and then whet that and you bring it back there and then you go back and forth and then suddenly everything firms up and it's all together. I mean, the reality is, I remember when we were negotiating, Diane Keaton's agreement in the parking lot of the production office 2 weeks before she was supposed to show up, and getting into.
I think it was later than that. I think literally it was Friday. We were going to start on Monday. There were issues.
Yes,
with
there
Diane.
were with the contract.
And the way that her representatives, naturally, the good negotiating put it was, if this is not resolved, she's not coming.
And they knew that
we had rehearsed for a couple of days in LA already, and you want in your heart to believe that she's committed to the thing, but when the agent and the lawyer says she's not going to show up unless this is resolved on a Friday and we're starting on Monday, you believe them.
But she had told us that she wanted to do the movie before we had financing.
Yes. But then you enter the hard part where a lawyer and an agent has to say, well, she's not doing that, she's not doing that, she's not doing that.
This doesn't make any sense to me at all. Why would she do this movie?
I'm going to talk her out of it. She's crazy.
Yeah. And then you have to kind of talk. There's a scene in The Killing Fields. Is that the name of the movie? The Killing Fields, right? The Roland Joffé, the Cambodian movie, where I forget the actor's name, is being held hostage, and his Cambodian kind of assistant is there's people with rifles and it's a very scary scene, and his Cambodian assistant is just talking with the people with the rifle, just talking and talking and talking and talking and talking, and you see him, and then it cuts, and then there's a time cut, and you see he's still talking and talking and talking, and then finally, you just see just keep talking, keep the conversation going, keep it happening, and then finally they're like, okay, and they let him go. And that's what I feel like these negotiations are around. I'm just gonna keep talking and talking. I'm gonna keep it. I mean, at a certain point, they're gonna be like, I have to get home to dinner. I've got it's like, whatever, okay, what do you want?
And then tell me about distribution. At what point did you have distribution in place?
Not till we were done with the movie, and that required that one woman, Elizabeth Redleaf, who financed the movie entirely, and to her enormous credit, she had already done 4 or 5 movies, and it hadn't been a profitable enterprise for her in any way. But she believed in this movie, and she made it. We had no distribution in place. We had begun selling the foreign, all right, and it was selling pretty well, and so she knew that she wasn't going to lose everything. But we did not have domestic distribution in place, and Sony Classic Pictures, which is distributing the movie, had flirted with financing the movie earlier, and then they stepped back and said, let someone else take the risk, and they stepped up and they said, we want to distribute the movie. But really, Elizabeth deserves enormous credit. She just put her money out there. There was no guarantees.
Thank you.
Let's come over to this side right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, I really appreciate you guys coming, number one. I mean, that it is a great honor for you to be here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
My 17-year-old son and I came today. He paid with his own money he earned from work to come and see you tonight, I have to say.
He came twice because you were here this afternoon.
Yeah, I was.
And the
yeah,
box
it was
office
you
was
talking to me.
closed.
That's right.
And he was really disappointed, and he walked away, and I thought, that guy ain't coming back.
I came back. My main question in terms of, you talked earlier about all the films you've been writing and how, well, speaking of sons, and none of your sons are your favorites or your least favorites. I have to ask a question about some of your sons being duplicated and changed and sequelized, and how you feel about some of those Raiders, the Star Wars films, and things of that nature, some have been incredibly successful and some have been incredibly not, and how that legacy, you know, in terms of how you have started that. You started that. I mean, granted, you came up with Empire and Jedi from
George
things,
really
but
started all that. I was George's, you know, I was his pen. You know, he created Star Wars when I had written Raiders of the Lost Ark right then, and he liked it, and he said, you know, I'm in trouble with this sequel to Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, and we're building sets, and I don't have a script. Will you come in? And I said, sure. I was very grateful to him. He had given me Raiders, and it wound up getting made later than The Empire Strikes Back. But I went up there, and we sat down, we were alone, and he said, you know, Darth Vader is Luke's father.
Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it.
Sorry to bring this up.
Just in case.
Spoiler alert.
Somebody hasn't been in the movies in the past 33 years, you know.
And I said, no shit. I was totally surprised and delighted, and he said, you want to write this? And I said, sure. It seemed to me that it was going to get better. And, you know, but the sequels, you know, they just keep going on, and I then declined to be involved with a lot of the other sequels. But I learned something 20 years ago. There was a wonderful power forward in the NBA named Buck Williams, and he was great for years, and he played for Portland. And I remember this interview I listened to, and the interviewer said, how do you feel being left off the All-Star team? And Buck Williams, who was a marvelous person, said, you know, I like to think about the things that I have, not the things that I don't have. And I thought, geez, that's like so simple and so smart. So I don't worry about any of that other stuff. I was very happy to be involved with the movies I've been involved with.
Well, thank you. My son has a question as well.
Yeah.
Did you expect Raiders to be such a hit?
You know, it's funny. That we did together, George and Stephen and I, and we just came up with it from nothing. But there was a feeling about it. It just seemed like a fun idea. And before anyone saw it, we had this feeling that people are going to like this. And that was maybe of any movie I've ever been involved with, there was more of a feeling among us like, and there was no precedent. There was not a sequel to anything. But everybody had a feeling like, this is really fun. And people are going to like it.
Halfway through the film earlier, he leaned to me and said, Dad, did you know he named Marion after your mother? Is that correct?
That's right.
My grandmother.
Your grandmother. And he leaned to me and said, did you know that, Dad?
Well, I'm impressed with
That
you.
was good.
And I would like, that's very impressive. And I think that the right thing would be for Anthony to give you this award.
You'll get it. You'll get one in 20 years.
Darn straight. Thank you all
Thank you.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question. I have to ask, Larry, have you seen the remake of Raiders that 3 high school kids did?
Yeah, amazing.
Does anybody not know what I'm talking about?
No,
There were these
shot for shot.
Okay, well, explain it. 'cause,
No, it's
you
a
know.
shot-for-shot remake of the entire film that they did on 8mm, I think. And in fact, there was going to be a feature film about them remaking it, but that never did happen. But it showed an extraordinary devotion to some mysterious cause. I don't know what. They wanted to see that they could remake the entire movie in their backyard.
The film series up at CU had that, played that a couple of years ago, and they had one of the kids who's now in his 30s or something, here to talk about it. And there's this one scene, if you remember the bar scene where the bar catches on fire in Indiana, comes through and the German guy gets the thing burned in his hand. Well, they recreated that with real fire in one of the kids' basements while the parents were at work. And he said, oh my God, my mom was going to kill me. Let's come over here, please.
I just want to say I love your work, and also, was there, and this is for all three of you, was there an original spark when you were initially starting to make films and write films that gave you the drive that your careers have demonstrated?
Well, I was 13 years old and I saw Lawrence of Arabia, and that was it for me. I just wanted, I thought that was the greatest pursuit that you could possibly have would be to make something like that, and try to make something like that, and you spend your whole career trying to, make something 1/10 as good. But when I came out of that movie, I saw it in Miami Beach, Florida, and I came out, and that was it for me. And everything after that was aimed at getting to direct movies.
I have this is like totally, I swear, the 100% truth, is that the thing that made me kind of understand films and kind of want to be part of it was the last scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark. I promise you, I've told you this before, haven't I? Have I never told you this? It's the scene where, I promise.
Wait a minute, hold on.
it's true.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Anybody not seen Raiders? Just checking.
It's the scene where after, this incredible story, and all about the Ark, all about this Ark, and you've just been through this like epic adventure, and it's just everything you want out of a movie, and then you see that I don't remember what the second to last scene was, but I remember the last shot is the Ark is in a box, and the camera's following the box as it's going down, and then you see the boxes rolling. And then the shot widens, and there's like just a worker who's pushing it, and the shot widens, and there's in this massive warehouse full of boxes. And I was like, oh my God, so I get it. It's like, these are the stories. Each one of these boxes is a story, and there's all these stories. There's all these stories that can be told, and we've just seen one of them. Right. And that for me was like, for me, it was also like a moment when I was like, oh, films can do that to you. They can really make you realize these things just by these images, and that was it for me. So this is a great circle to be able to come back and actually work with Larry.
Meg, do you have one of those stories of, this is when I knew I wanted to do this?
Larry and I met each other at the University of Michigan when we were juniors there. And he said to me, I'm going to be a screenwriter, I'm going to write movies, and then I'm going to sell them, and after I sell them, I'm going to be so good that I am going to be able to direct. And so I said, okay, that sounds good. And that's how I started down that path.
There's our first date, and this is really indulgent, now forgive me. Spoiler alert. No, our first date, I took her to the movies. There was an art house in Ann Arbor, one of a couple then, and we saw a Japanese movie called Woman in the Dunes. A fabulous movie, which I recommend to you now, but, and recently someone sent us, someone I didn't know very well, sent us an ad from the Michigan Daily advertising Woman in the Dunes that night, which was our first date. Wow. But what's important is that the plot of Woman in the Dunes is that a woman entices a man to her place in the sand dunes, and he can never get out.
That's what I did.
40 years later.
40 years ago.
I'm gonna come to your question in just a second, but Larry, I want to ask you one thing that I noticed in the credits, and I don't know if this is the first time that you're a songwriter. That
Yes,
last
and
song playing over the credits.
It's true, and I'd rather no one noticed it. They didn't play the song too loud tonight, and it actually has to be much louder so that it almost, you can't understand it, which is better. But it was fun. Had very talented collaborators, and if anyone ever sees the movie again, the song is about this quality of dogs being willing to hang with you no matter what. That's really what it's about.
Okay. Question over here.
I've got to ask, speaking of dogs, Colorado is one of the most dog-crazed state in the entire country, hands down. Was that accidental or deliberate?
Well, not only did we have Mac, our rescue dog here, but my son has 2 dogs. One just passed away at 16. And those dogs always came with us to Colorado when we would come to Colorado. When Mac was lost, we brought the other 2 dogs to search for Mac with us because we thought they would have the best instinct about where to find him and how to bring him in. So when the friendly voice that she tells them to have to bring back Freeway, we thought these dogs maybe would be that friendly voice that would be. We were not able, that didn't work, but the next day the dog did show up, so.
Well,
Thanks.
thanks. Am I right that the line in the film about Chambers Road is
Yes.
true? Like that?
I picked a spot on the way from the airport where they just dropped the baby off to home. And when we drove in yesterday, I've never been to Denver before, and I asked Lisa, the lovely lady who's been driving us, to point out Chambers Road and I-70.
Yeah, there it was. Question over here, please.
Yes, Mr. Kasdan, could you comment on the process involved in bringing James Newton Howard in?
Yeah, well, James, I was thinking about James Newton Howard is a composer, a great composer. He's done 6 of my movies. I met him before he was composing. He was actually married to Roseanne Arquette right after Silverado, and I met him when he came to visit her on Silverado. But then when we went to make Grand Canyon, I asked him to do the movie, and he's done every score since then for me. But he's an example. He makes an enormous amount of money to do these scores. He does Dark Knight, and he does all these gigantic pictures. And when we went to him, I said, will you do this? And I have no money. And he said, great, fine. But with him, and this is an actual case, I'm absolutely certain he lost money on this movie because he paid for a lot of the recording time. There's no way that he could have come out ahead. He lost money by doing this movie. Wow. And there has not been a moment when he hasn't been total, full cheerleader. And that is part of the spirit of independent film, and that's what Anthony has taught me, that people are ready to do that. And I'm forever grateful to James and to, dozens of other people on this movie. When Diane Wiest leaves the comfort, she doesn't like to leave the comfort of her home in Manhattan, but she did. And she came to Utah for 6 weeks and lived in a hotel. And she must have lost money in the long run on it. Literally nothing between us. And so she does it because she wanted to work with Richard Jenkins. She wanted to work with these other actors. And she liked that part. And when she sits there on that porch and says nothing, and she's so eloquent, when he's describing the pub, I am so much in love with Diane Wiest and her generosity to come and be part of this movie. And that's the greatest thing about movie making on any scale, is that feeling of these people have brought their gifts to bear on your idea.
Good question.
So this really was a labor of love. I said, so this really was a labor of love.
Yes.
I kind of got that.
Great.
Thank you.
Behind you. Go ahead.
I have 2 questions, one for each of you. From a producing standpoint, do you think it was easier to negotiate because you had the Kasdans writing the script, and then you just peripherally mentioned Silverado? If you could talk a little bit, that's one of my all-time favorite movies. If you could talk a little bit about maybe some memories that you have of making that particular film, I'd really appreciate it.
I won't bore everybody with it. I appreciate that very much. My brother and I had played cowboys from the time we were very young. We lived in West Virginia in the woods, essentially, and we would go play cowboys in the Appalachian Mountains. It was very odd. But once I shot him with a BB gun, point blank. I was sorry. I didn't mean to do it. But after I'd made The Big Chill and it was very successful, I was able to do whatever I wanted. And the first thing I said to my brother, let's write a Western and let's do a Western. And it was absolutely as much fun as we thought it would be. It was one of the great experiences of my life, and I loved it. And everybody, again, people want to be in that movie. They just wanted to, everybody wants to ride a horse and wear a hat.
Okay. Kevin Costner got to stand up in one of your movies, Silverado. Because, we all know the story that he was the body in Big Chill, and you had said, okay, I'll give you my next movie.
That's right.
The Silverado. One more from the audience here, please.
Okay, well, of course, I love Silverado. It was a wonderful film. I have the unfortunate occupation of being an accountant. And so as we're talking about, funding the films and paying people different rates, et cetera, I wonder if that secret information behind what goes on, after you've convinced these people, these famous people who help bring the success of a film that this will surely be into fruition, if you have the option of paying bonuses or something like that rectifies the
these
situation.
people all have an investment. I mean, everyone who was paid way below what they make, if the movie's successful, they will all see something from it. And that has been true for me since The Big Chill, and it wasn't my idea, but George Lucas was very generous with his collaborators. And Raiders of the Lost Ark was the first picture that job I ever got. I had sold a couple original screenplays, but on Raiders of the Lost Ark, I got this job, and it didn't pay very much, but I was thrilled to be working with George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, the two hottest directors in the world at that moment. And when they were making the deal, they said, "Oh, you're only going to be paid this much." And I said, "Fine, I don't care." And then they said, "But George wants you to have a piece of the movie." And I had no leverage. I would have said yes no matter what. But he had started with American Graffiti, sharing in the success of movies, and I have tried to do that ever since. Unfortunately, I've never had the kind of success that he had with Raiders, and has been very generous with me. But the idea is there, which is that if anyone goes to see this movie, and I'm not counting on it, but if they do, everyone will benefit from it.
Well, of course, you should count on it. You should count on it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So let me wrap up with one last thing, if I can. We have a long weekend of movies to show, but I want to wrap with you, Larry, with one thing. You have written or co-written 4 of the biggest, most successful movies in American history: Raiders, Empire, and Jedi. And a film that you wrote in 1975, originally wanted to have Steve McQueen and Diana Ross in. Took 17.
Barbra Streisand.
I'm sorry?
Steve McQueen and Barbra Streisand.
Or Barbra Streisand. It took 17 years to get it made. It finally did get made in the early 90s, and it was The Bodyguard. And I would, given the events of the past week, I'd love for you just to talk about your experience with Whitney Houston, if you would.
It was shocking. I was shocked like everybody else. Obviously there were terrible signs, and Whitney had a very rough time. I never saw or spoke to Whitney since the movie, and our experience on the movie couldn't have been better. She was sweet, and she had never made a movie before. If you look at the movie, whatever strengths or weaknesses it has, you see her vulnerability about acting. And Kevin, who was the greatest lobbyist for her doing that movie, was very good with her. And I produced the movie. It was the first script I had ever sold. And I was astounded what happened with that movie. And a lot of it was Whitney. It was that one song particularly, but it was Whitney exploding. And the movie was gigantic in the United States, but it was twice as big overseas. And no one was more amazed than us. We were surprised. But it was a horrible thing what happened the other day. And you worry, how can this happen when so many people are around her and so many people watching? And it does happen. It happens every day. And some people are famous, some people are anonymous, and it happens. And it was heartbreaking.
Yeah. Given your experience with her, I just wanted you to touch on that since you were here on our stage. It is truly an honor, a professional honor, a personal pleasure to have these people on the stage who have been so instrumental in so many movies. Anthony Bregman, Larry Kasdan, and Meg Kasdan.
Thank you.
Please help me say thank you to them for being here for the 2012 Boulder International Film Festival. Steve.